Is there any pain like having the house you built turn its back on you and lock you out in the music world, once called legendary artists? There are people who gave their souls, only to be erased for speaking their truth. A young female singer was fired after accusing a director of backstage abuse. A legendary singer was taken off television for singing about black reproductive freedom. A soul icon was replaced at the last minute for refusing to have her appearance altered to suit white tastes. And that's just the beginning of the truth. The stories behind it are much more bitter and cruel. Watch until the end and tell us, who do you believe pushed them out of the spotlight? 17. Esther Phillips, the woman who knew too much.
What a difference a day makes.
They say Esther Phillips sings like she's pleading with God, cries into the spotlight, and tells stories from her broken heart. But here's something that few people know. Esther once said, "If you listen, I'm not just singing, I'm reporting." Born into poverty, Esther broke out as a teenage musical genius, but her career, from start to finish, was always manipulated by those who wanted to control, not share. At 15, Esther was forced to sign a lifetime contract with her first record label, a document she later described as a black ink prison sentence. But it wasn't her singing that got Esther blacklisted. It was her voice. In 1972 at a concert in Harlem. As the music stopped, Esther stood in the middle of the stage, wiped her sweat, and told the audience that her label manager had raped her. There was a moment of silence. The audience was stunned. The band didn't dare play anymore. People thought she was joking, but she wasn't joking. The next day, the local paper ran a small line at the bottom of its culture page: Esther Phillips causes a stir with unproven allegations. 3 weeks later, her new album recording was canceled. An MC who had invited her on his show said he couldn't risk being sued for her. An insider leaked, "She talks too much. They're closing the door on her." But the big twist was elsewhere. A freelance journalist named Marcus Hilton interviewed her after the show. He never got to print the article, but he says that when he went through Esther's copyright files, he found a recording in which Esther lamented that even painkillers are as controlled as my contract. He kept the recording. 3 months later, he disappeared in a house fire that never got investigated. In 1984, Esther died in her small apartment, without a contract, without copyright, without a big audience. But those who remember say she wasn't killed by a gun, but by silence. A silence that lasted 12 years. Sometimes, people don't need to kill you, they just need to erase you from history. And Esther was a chapter torn out, simply because she knew too much and dared to tell it all. 16. Billy Paul, the man who sings about life in a world that prefers silent death. While many soul artists were trying to avoid politics, Billy Paul took a different path, singing about the most sacred thing, procreation. But that song, "Let's Make a Baby," not only got him ostracized, it became an underground case without an indictment. In 1976, Billy released the song with its soft harmonies and gentle, prayer-like lyrics, but in the eyes of those in power, it was a threat. A black singer, appearing in the middle of the night on national radio, whispering about creating life more dangerous than any protest slogan. Just a week after its release, radio stations began receiving morality warnings. An internal document from the Broadcasting Authority that was later leaked revealed that there was an order to reduce the airplay of songs that promote sex that are not family-friendly, and "Let's Make a Baby" was on the red list, alongside songs about war and political protest. Billy responded publicly, but the stab in the back came from the place he least expected: his record label. "I was told not to mention that song in any campaign," recalls a former employee. "When I asked why, they said, 'You don't understand, that song is not about love, it's about protest.' And indeed, if you listen back, there are lines like, 'We create life to counteract the death that's programmed into us from a young age.'" The fall tour was canceled. A gig in Europe was replaced at the last minute. The climax came when Billy arrived at an event in Chicago and was replaced at the last minute by a white country singer. No one had told him. He was backstage in costume and escorted out by security. The truth has never been recorded, But many in the industry say Billy was an example of a black man singing the wrong song, a song about life in a world controlled by silent death. Billy was never convicted, but he was stripped of his right to be present. His songs were still played, but his face was not on the screen. That's how the system deals with disobedience. Let you sing, but don't tell anyone who you are. 15. Donnie Hathaway. The fall from the 15th floor and the recording was never found. Donnie Hathaway didn't die of illness. He died because his music touched a place that people didn't want to remember. In 1978, Donnie entered a dark period, not because of a lack of work, but because he started demanding things he shouldn't have asked for: control over his songs, transparency in his earnings, and most importantly, to be credited as an independent producer. This made the people who were making money off of him uncomfortable. He once recorded a meeting between himself and the executives of his record label. On the tape, he said, "I am not a commodity. If you want to buy my soul, you will not have enough money." The recording, according to his close friend Charles Mayo, was hidden in a brown suitcase labeled "Keep Singing." A month later, the suitcase disappeared. Then, on the night of January 13, 1979, Donnie was found lying on the 15th floor of the Essex House Hotel. The police declared him a suicide, but in unreleased internal records, it is said that Donnie was still wearing headphones when he fell. The receptionist remembered him calling to say that someone had broken into my room, trying to take my documents. The police did not verify this. Friends said that Donnie was haunted by the idea that someone was listening, that they were taking everything from me. He once canceled an interview after discovering that the microphone had not been turned off after recording. A month after his death, his record label released the compilation Donnie Forever. Not a penny of the royalties went to his family. And even stranger, his final recording, recorded just a day before his death, was never discovered. Some call it fate, but to those who know the game, it's a warning. Donnie was an artist who dared to speak out, to keep tapes, and to record private meetings, and he fell off the 15th floor, while the suitcase containing his final recording was never found. Not all assassinations require a gun. Some just let you fall and call it fate. 14. Fontella Bass, the woman who got her name removed from her song. The question that has persisted for decades after Rescue Me became a national hit is, why was Fontella Bass never credited as a co-writer? She wrote the hook. She defined the rescue voice that was so prominent in the mid-60s, but in all legal documents. Her name is nowhere to be found. Fontella said, in a recording that was taken off the internet after 48 hours, that when she walked out of the studio that day, the music was still in her head, but the control was gone. She signed a provision that included a faint line that said she relinquished all ownership. No one gave her time to read it. Her manager was the one she trusted most, and the one who remained silent for the rest of her life. Strangely enough, 3 months after Rescue Me was released, a contract listed Carl Smith and Raynard Minor as the main songwriters, who were not in the studio when the final cut was recorded. Fontella called Chess Records and asked to speak to the production manager. The secretary said, "You have no claim here," and after that call, her entire tour was canceled, no explanation. Her co-stars said Fontella went from shock to collapse. One time, she agreed to perform on a Georgia television show, but when she arrived, the poster simply read, "Surprise guest voice of Rescue Me." She was not introduced by name, she was the ghost of her song. Years later, she returned to the church. No more stage lights, no more copyright, no more identity in the music system that had nurtured her. "People can steal my songs," she said, "but they can't steal the pain I carry." The question remains, who drew up the contract to remove her name from the song, and who was behind the silence of the entire system? 13. Linda Jones, the angel who was boycotted in a silent conspiracy. Linda Jones did not die of diabetes, at least, not just diabetes. She died in a makeshift recording studio, in the middle of recording a new ballad. But behind her sudden death was a series of irregularities that have never been clarified, and a shady contract that left her secretly ostracized before her death. In 1971, a major record label offered Linda a lucrative advance in exchange for her signing a commitment to hand over ownership of all new recordings, no right to object to production, and no co-writer credit. Linda refused. On the contract, she handwrote the words, "No voice for silence." 3 days later, her former manager, who had connections to the label, announced the end of the partnership. The tour dates disappeared. A New Jersey DJ told the local paper that he had been ordered to play Linda less. No one renewed her contract. But the strangest thing, the song she was recording on the day of her death was called "My Rights to Love." "I heard the demo," a close friend recalled. It was about a woman who had everything taken away from her because she knew too much. The demo disappeared. The master tapes were gone. The sound engineer was later hired by the record label she had rejected. No one investigated. No one looked into why a talented singer could die in a studio without medical equipment. There was only a brief headline: Linda Jones died of complications from diabetes. But to many in the industry, Linda was a traitor to order, someone who refused to bow down, and her death, even without a gun, had the color of a pre-programmed elimination. 12. Betty Wright, the microphone that reveals buried secrets. Betty Wright once said, "I don't need anyone to tell me to shut up. I have a microphone, and I'm going to use it to speak for those who don't dare." Little did she know that the microphone would be what would push her into the clutches of some of the most powerful forces in black music. In 1989, at a small conference in Miami, Betty told the story of a young artist whose manager had forced her to have sex in exchange for a recording. She didn't name names, but within days, TV shows began to refuse to book her. A solo album had just been completed when the record label put her on hold. No reason, no text. She kept talking. In a late-night radio broadcast, she said, "We live in an industry where abuse is paid and truth is fired." The recording of the broadcast was later truncated when it was republished. A fellow singer revealed that there was a circle of power consisting of producers, managers, and publicists who got together to create a list of people not to work with. Betty's name was at the top of the list. She was last nominated for a Grammy in 1988. Although she continued to sing and release music, it was as if the music world had chosen to ignore her. Betty called it the light being pulled out. She recalled that one day, when she arrived at the studio, she discovered that she no longer had a pass. The guard said, "We've been ordered to change the system. Your name is not on the new list." Betty fought back, but she knew she had touched a taboo. She once wrote in her diary, "I wasn't abused, but I was punished for speaking out." And when she left, her voice still carried something that had not been exposed, secrets she had not had time to tell. But the audience, those who still listen to her, who remember her, understand some people are made to disappear not because they are wrong, but because they are too real. 11. Millie Jackson, Queen of Nakedness or Cursed Rule Breaker. In the R&B world of the 70s, no one spoke about bold sex, female power, and mean men as frankly as Millie Jackson. When she stepped on stage, people didn't just hear music, they heard accusations. But behind the lights was a darkness that was silently surrounding her. Millie was once known as the woman without fear, once holding the whole audience's breath with a nearly 5-minute monologue in the middle of the song, "If You're Not Back in Love by Monday." But few people knew that behind that mocking smile and provocative dance moves were a series of contracts being withdrawn, shows being banned, and a semi-secret list of banned artists. One of the darkest nights was in 1979. Millie was invited to perform at a major award show in Atlanta. She had prepared Fuck You Symphony, a satire of the entertainment industry's elite, but at the last minute, the host told her the number had been cut from the script. No explanation, no warning. A backup singer had been assigned. A former sound director recalled that after the show, he found in the assistant's hand a list printed on yellow paper with the words "Artists flagged as high-risk content, MJ priority level red." She was not allowed to explain. All political questions were cut from interviews. The album Livin' Uncensored was rejected by major retail chains. A Capitol source said, "We can't have anything to do with women demanding power in music and demanding the right to be vulgar." The irony is that what Millie said about sex, about control, about inequality, later became a trend that the music industry itself exploited. But no one paid her royalties. No one mentioned her as a pioneer. She was a shadow, locked outside the door she had once kicked in. Millie didn't die. She was buried alive in deliberate oblivion. "They want me to shut up," she once said, "but I say it, I'm alive." Sometimes, an artist's greatest sin isn't being wrong, it's being too far ahead of the curve, and saying exactly what people are trying to hide. If you've made it this far, it means your heart is still pounding for forgotten injustice. Each artist on this list has lost not only their reputation, but also their right to live. This journey still has 10 more painful souls strangled by invisible hands. But let's ask, if they weren't black, would they have been banned? 10. Bobby Womack, the man who loved the wrong woman. When Bobby Womack married Barbara Cooke, widow of the legendary Sam Cooke, the entire music industry was shocked. They didn't just protest, they punished. But this story was more than just a controversial love affair. It was the beginning of a series of systematic retaliation aimed at an artist who dared to break the unspoken rules. After the sudden death of Sam Cooke, Bobby, who was an artist under Sam, entered Barbara's life. Just a few months after the funeral, they married. But behind this decision is a mysterious maze. A journalist discovered that Barbara had received anonymous threats while still using the Cooke name on her paperwork. A close friend said that Barbara had once said, "If I don't remarry, they'll take all of Sam's money." Soon after the wedding, Bobby was dropped from several record labels. His new album was indefinitely postponed. An insider rumor circulated that Womack had broken a sacred law. But which law? An anonymous source at RCA, the label that distributed Sam Cooke's music, said Bobby was considered an unauthorized heir. He was denied his music, and his name was not mentioned at Sam's memorial. Contracts were torn up before they were signed. Tours were technically broken at the last minute. In 1971, an unreleased recording of Bobby's confession booth went missing. In it, he recounts his feelings of betrayal, stalking, and being followed after his wedding. The recording was played for only 17 seconds on local radio before the signal was cut off. Behind Bobby's affluent exterior and love songs was a man who was pushed aside for daring to love and for touching on things that people didn't want to talk about: money, inheritance, and who owned a legend's memory. No one convicted Bobby, but he was secretly blocked as if he had committed a crime that had never been written into the law, loving the wrong person at the wrong time, and daring to cross the line. 9. Sil Johnson, the last man to sue the American music industry. When Sil Johnson decided to sue a bunch of record companies for using his music without permission, people called him crazy. But over the years, people started calling him a no-show. Sil had it all: the hit "Is It Because I'm Black" that sent radio stations into a frenzy, and a bluesy voice that made young and old alike identify with him. But he was also the first to do what no one else did: file 72 lawsuits against America's biggest music companies. But then something strange happened. Despite winning a few cases, he gradually disappeared from the music map. A TV show that was scheduled to interview him was canceled at the last minute. His albums were relegated to the back room. And strangest of all, a documentary about him already filmed was never released. A technician on the film crew revealed that at one point, Sil said, "They don't want us to know that black people invented all this soul music," and when the clip was sent back for post-production, all the data was lost. The hard drive burned, the server crashed. "I've never seen anything disappear like that, unless someone did it on purpose," said one IT expert. But the twist. In 2007, a series of famous rappers were sued for sampling Sil's music. When reporters asked why no one had asked for permission, the label's representative replied, "We thought he was gone." The industry thought he was gone. They helped him disappear. But Sil Johnson never stopped fighting. "I'm the last one keeping the books," he once wrote in his diary, "and it looks like they're going to burn them." But he kept singing, and every time Sil's notes rang out over hip-hop, the audience was reminded there was someone who dared to stand up and was paid not in money, but in presence. 8. Marlena Shaw, the voice removed from the billboard. Marlena Shaw once made America silent with the song "California Soul," a song that was both seductive and free, just like her. But few people know that the woman behind that hit was quietly dropped by major brands after daring to speak the truth. It all started when Marlena signed a contract to promote a major soft drink brand in 1981. In the ad, they used the image of a black woman in a bikini, dancing to Marlena's music. but cut out her real face, all voice, no identity. Marlena was furious. "If you don't want to show my face, don't use my voice to sell your drinks," she told a small press conference. Just days later, her summer gigs were canceled en masse. "We were asked to withdraw the invitation," admitted a TV producer. They said Marlena was ruining the brand, but no one said who they were. A behind-the-scenes witness revealed that Marlena's name appeared in an internal email from a major media company, under the heading "Not in line with the public relations strategy." From then on, her songs were no longer chosen for promotional campaigns. A record company pulled her old albums from its distribution list for restructuring reasons. The price she paid for her authenticity was silence that lasted until the end of her career. But she never apologized. "I can't sing about the soul if my soul is trapped in a distorted image," she said. Marlena Shaw passed away in 2023 quietly, but with no regrets. She lived and sang like a person who could not be edited. 7. Ann Peebles, the woman who refused to change her skin to live. Ann Peebles never needed fancy choreography or flashy lights. With just one line of "I can't stand the rain," she melted audiences with her authenticity. But that authenticity became the reason why the industry gradually eliminated her. In the early 80s, when the disco and pop waves were on the rise, record labels asked Ann to renew her image. They wanted her to cut her hair short in a trendy style, switch to dance music, and most importantly, to reduce her too old-fashioned soul. Ann refused. "I don't change my skin to live," she said in a meeting. "If my soul isn't in my music, I'm not me." Soon after, the new album was shelved. The Detroit show was canceled because of a change in artist strategy. A TV director revealed that he was warned by his superiors Ann is no longer relevant to modern audiences. Modern at the time meant not too dark. But the biggest twist was a recording session that was interrupted mid-session. The entire technical staff was suddenly replaced mid-session. A younger, more pop singer was brought into the studio, and the original track was remixed the following week. Ann returned to Memphis, cutting off many of her former collaborators. Not a word of complaint, but she kept her style, her voice, her soul. Ann Peebles wasn't eliminated because she was weak. She was eliminated because she refused to pretend. And that's why true music lovers still seek out her voice, no matter how the times change. 6. Gene Chandler, the crowned hero against darkness. Gene Chandler was known as the Duke of Earl, with his aristocratic image and powerful voice. But behind that cloak was a lone warrior who dared to fight against the music industry's segregation system and paid the price in solitude. In the late 1960s, when major venues were still secretly segregated, Gene publicly refused to perform if the audience was divided into black and white sections. During a concert in Alabama, he canceled the show because the organizers refused to let black people sit in the front row. The Southern press criticized him as a splinter. But the real price came behind the scenes. A tour featuring 3 major artists had his name removed from the poster. A record label suggested he change his stage name from Earl G. Chandler to sound less ethnic. He refused, and then the new gigs dried up. There was an unofficial list, says one engineer who had recorded with him. They called it the soft blacklist. A recording session in 1973 was interrupted by a system error. But Gene himself said he saw a strange man standing at the engineering desk, not a staff member. After that, the recording was lost forever. There were no copies. The Duke of Earl crown didn't save him from the system, but he never took it off. "If I had to bow my head to sing," he once said, "I wouldn't have anything left to sing." Gene Chandler wasn't against music. He was against discrimination, and those who tried to erase him now have to face the truth that his voice has never been silenced. 5. Ike Turner, the genius locked in a dark past. Ike Turner was a pioneer. He is considered the father of rock and roll with Rocket 88 in 1951. But when his name is mentioned later, the public only remembers one thing: abuse. In the late 1970s, after Tina Turner publicly accused him of abuse in her memoir, Ike was virtually erased from the mainstream music scene, but behind the scenes, the story is not simply a personal scandal. A journalist once recounted that in 1985 he tried to make a documentary about Ike's role in shaping modern music. When he sent his resume to 3 major television networks, all were rejected. citing inappropriate branding. One music producer said in particular, "I got an internal letter saying that if I hired Ike Turner, I would lose sponsorship deals from 2 media companies." Ike was not only blocked from the airwaves, an album he produced for young artists was rejected for release, even though it had been recorded. The reason was never made public. And notably, a book on the history of R&B was asked to remove his name from its list of influential figures, to avoid moral controversy. He did not deny his wrongdoing, but also said, "If I were not black, would they have condemned me forever?" Perhaps the price he paid was not only because of his wrongdoing, but also because his name was too big to forgive. Although many people cannot forget his past, a large number still remember him as a talent locked in his box. 4. Rick James, the rebel who no one dares to play again. Rick James was once the black hurricane of funk, wild, fiery, and unapologetic, but from the height of his fame, he was erased from American television with suspicious speed. In 1981, after Rick James performed Super Freak with its provocative choreography and sexually suggestive lyrics on live television, a secret meeting was held among representatives of major networks. One witness said, "This black man cannot dominate prime time." Just a month later, Rick was pulled from 3 live shows. A promotional segment for his new album was cut from NBC without any official explanation. The record label was said to have been pressured by advertising sponsors to scale back its release campaign. Strangely, in 1983, Rick filed a lawsuit against a record label for copyright infringement. But before the lawsuit could be made public, the press reported a scandal involving drugs and sexual violence. A former lawyer revealed the case has not been decided yet, but he has been tried out of court. Since then, Rick James has become a banned symbol. His music has been labeled unsuitable for family television, but he once said, "I don't make art to please them. I make art so they can't sleep." And indeed, to this day, the name Rick James still makes the television world whisper in the dark. 3. Sly Stone, the soul against the system. Sly Stone is not only the frontman of the band Sly and the Family Stone. He was a living symbol of the dream of diversity, unity, and freedom in the mid-1960s. But after a while, he disappeared almost without a trace. In 1975, Sly refused a sponsorship deal from a major liquor brand, saying, "I don't want my music labeled." After that statement, he was unexpectedly dropped from 3 major tours. A DJ who had publicly supported Sly said he was fired from the station after only 1 night of playing the original version of Family Affair. That same year, Sly appeared on a talk show and openly criticized racism in the recording industry. The tape of the session suffered from technical failure and was never re-aired. A leaked VHS clip shows the host awkwardly interrupting Sly as he begins to talk about the big guys who control the color in music. When Sly retired from the industry, many assumed he was addicted, depressed, and insane. But a close friend said he wasn't crazy. He was just ignored by too many deaf people. He lived in a van in Los Angeles for years, not because of poverty, but because he was no longer called back. Sly once said, "If you fight the system makes you look crazy." But to those who listened, they knew he was the last sane man in a music industry that had learned to stay silent to survive. 2. Marvin Gaye, Prophet Strangled Between Peace and Violence. When What's Going On was released in 1971, Marvin Gaye was no longer a soul star. He was America's prophet. But the song also marked the beginning of his underground status, which no one dared to openly acknowledge. Motown didn't want to release the song. Berry Gordy called it too political, too uncommercial. When the song became a hit, Marvin thought he had won, but the system only backed off from attacking him. A national tour was canceled in half. "We were warned that Marvin's songs would cause an undesirable reaction," admitted one radio executive. Subsequent recordings were delayed or edited. Gaye once wrote in his diary, "I wasn't murdered, but I was strangled by an invisible hand." The man who sang about love and war became a political shadow that no label dared to touch. Marvin did not back down. He sang to the end and left a question. Are the voices of conscience always marginalized, especially when they are black? 1. Sam Cooke, the man who died for freedom. Sam Cooke was more than a singer. He was a strategist, a dreamer, and a businessman who feared the establishment. In 1963, he founded SAR Records, a label where black artists retained copyright and controlled profits. At the same time, he publicly supported Martin Luther King, spending money to sponsor civil rights marches. That's when the shadows began to close in. Major stations played his music less. A television contract was pulled at the last minute. There was a list of artists who were considered risky, a lawyer once revealed. Sam was on the first list. Then came that fateful night in 1964. Sam was shot dead in a motel, in obscure circumstances, with no witnesses, no cameras. The police ruled it was self-defense. But many knew he was carrying a file on a project to open a national black musicians union. The file was never found. Sam Cooke didn't die because of sex or a mistake. He died because he had touched a power that black artists at the time were not allowed to dream of. Those who were blacklisted were not losers, but people who dared to be true to themselves in a world that demanded a bow. Their stories are examples of the courage we need to protect. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the stories of those who were silenced. If you believe the truth should be told, please like, share the video, and leave a comment in memory of the artists you love most.